Advocate Muzi Sikhakhane just gave one of the most powerful courtroom speeches of the year. A farewell to Justice Madlanga that turned into a warning for South Africa. And his comments on the Mkhwanazi Commission? Explosive. Stick around and let's explore. Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX, or the Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh experience. If you're new around here, I'm Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, and on this channel we explore South African politics through interviews and analysis. I just want to say before we kick off on this episode, we have been inundated with advertising requests because of the way this channel is surging through digital media. If you want to get in touch with us, make sure you message info@smw-x.co.za and we can talk about partnering, if it's a big offer. Okay, having said that, I really wanted to take a look at a very fascinating moment. It may just look like a snapshot, but I think it's a moment in South African history on which we need to reflect. Advocate Muzi Sikhakhane, friend of the show, friend of the podcast. He's been on this podcast many times, and do watch my interviews with him, which I think have been fascinating. He gave a speech in the Concourt recently, but it wasn't just any speech. It was a speech to bid farewell to Justice Madlanga. Why does Madlanga matter? Well, he is the person who will be heading up the Mkhwanazi Commission. The commission which will look into the allegations made by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi about criminal syndicates infiltrating the highest levels of the South African state. Now, it turns out that Madlanga is retiring from the Concourt. He's just retired, which is, by the way, why he's able to take up this post as head of the commission. And in bidding farewell to a judge in South Africa, there are often these tributes and speeches from legal practitioners, other judges, and politicians. But I want you to pay special attention to this speech, because it was a speech that was both about the importance of dissent in a democracy and about the importance of this commission and the bravery which Justice Madlanga has to exercise as he goes into what Sikhakhane called the belly of the beast. So I want to think through this speech. Let's see how Sikhakhane kicked it off. It's a brief speech. It's about 7 minutes, but it's packed with interesting insights. Here's how he started.
Chief Justice, Justice Meyer, Acting Deputy Chief Justice, the celebrant today, Oratile, Madlanga.
Side note, Madlanga, Justice Madlanga's middle name is Russell. That is endearing.
Former Chief Justice, my homeboy, Mnyamezeli Raymond Zondo. Former Deputy Chief Justice, Msenege.
Let me stop right there. Remember that former Chief Justice Raymond Zondo chaired the State Capture Commission, and Advocate Sikhakhane and Zondo really fundamentally disagreed on Zuma's appearance. So this was also a moment of respect and reconciliation between two senior legal practitioners who had been on opposing sides of issues. But Sikhakhane paying special attention to saying my homeboy Raymond Zondo because of their ties, which he details in his book, which go back all the way to KZN.
From President Mbeki, my sister Toko Didiza, the Speaker, and my sister, the Minister, and all judges present and magistrates present here, and colleagues and everybody, Nabo Khatebe. Khatebe, ngicabanga ukuthi kufanele sisho okokuqala ukuthi sizindondonye ifuba, siyaqhatsha, siyazidla umsebenzi owenzile.
Sikhakhane kicks off by starting the speech ngesiZulu, which is also important in that space where we often hear so much English spoken. Sikhakhane wants to disrupt the linguistic norms, and he goes into a period of his speech which is in isiZulu. He's just paying tribute to Justice Madlanga and saying how important his work has been.
Ngicabanga ukuthi indima oyikhathulile kwezomthetho nezokuba umahluleli ikhombise abantu ukuthi ukuba umahluleli ezweni elikhululekile kuyini, nokuthi umkhombandlela walaba abaphethe abamajaji ekwenzeni ukuthi inkululeko yabantu ibe yilokho eyayifanele ibe yiko.
So Sikhakhane just speaking about Madlanga's leadership on the court and showing how a judicial leader can give South Africa the kind of freedom that South Africa deserves, the kind of freedom that should be the right form of freedom. So he moves into a part of his speech which talks about the importance of diversity because of a judgment that Madlanga wrote which spoke about the importance of equity and racial justice in South Africa.
I'm going to quote you in order to celebrate you, not your judgment, but I'm going to quote a statement that you made on the 17th of November 2019 in an important paper that I think generations will have to read about diversity. Of course, you quote and borrow from the dissenting judgment of Justice Thurgood Marshall in it, and you say this: imagine a man of extremely limited means. He shares a small apartment with his family, his wife, his mother, his sister, and his 2 small children, one of whom suffers from cystic fibrosis. His wife stopped working because of her pregnancy and is now focused on caring for the sick child. The man was fired from his job as an insurance agent when the insurance premiums he collected were stolen from his home. When he was unable to make up the sum, his former employer filed a claim against him. Although he has since diligently looked for work, the bad reference from his former employer has made it impossible for him to find another steady job. His family survives entirely on public assistance. His only assets are the clothes he wears, some essential household goods, and a couch in storage. This man desperately seeks to file for bankruptcy, including discharge of the debt he owes to his former employer, so that he and his family can make a new start in life. Due to his poverty, however, he cannot afford the filing fee, which you describe as the filing fee as comparable to the revenue stamp that was used to be required when filing summons or an application. He cannot pay it as a lump sum. He cannot pay it in installments. He cannot borrow money to pay it. He is utterly without options. Close quote. I say this is an epic definition of diversity because in this article you grapple with diversity. And you have brought that in this court. And diversity not because of race or class only, but because diversity means the accommodation of different modernities and different epistemic traditions into a court.
Right, so now he's building on starting with isiZulu, speaking about the importance of diversity, not just in terms of race, but in terms of different ways of seeing the world and being able to accommodate more than just a traditional liberal English-speaking paradigm of justice in South African constitutional jurisprudence. But he's also quoting Madlanga, writing an article in which Madlanga quotes Thurgood Marshall, a former judge of the Supreme Court in the United States, an African-American judge of the Supreme Court of the United States. So he's bringing different forms and judicial thinking into this space in the Concord as he's paying tribute to Madlanga, but making a deeper point about the importance of different perspectives. Now he's going to go into why it's important in current South Africa for the debate to be widened beyond just a narrow, specific understanding of where South Africa should go in the future.
And you bring that not because you bring your race, because you bring the spirit of your village, of your township. It would not be diversity if you didn't do what you've done so well in the past decades, which is to bring to this court not your race only, not your gender, but the epistemic paradigms of your people in the village. Because diversity would mean nothing. Would mean nothing if the new assimilated into the cognitive traditions of the old. All we would be is just a group of people, different colors and genders, but all swallowed in Eurocentric approaches of ways of being and ways of seeing. And you have brought that. You have brought to this court something we will be proud of. Dissent, frowned upon by many. But Pius Langa told us that the world was moved by those who dissent, the lone voices. And we as the Pan-African Bar Association appreciate what you've been to this court. We hope that your retirement, which is usually splendid solitude, for one to do the things they have not been doing, for one to reflect, and for one to seek forgiveness for errors that they've made in the stormy ways of life, and sometimes to seek purgatory before they go to heaven.
So we need to pause, because what was said there was a lot, especially in the context of South African constitutional jurisprudence, debates about the Constitution, South Africa's political moment right now, the GNU. You might think I'm pulling a lot out of the speech, but you've got to understand what Sikhakhane is trying to say here, because he's paying tribute to Madlanga. Madlanga has been someone who's been willing to go against the grain, who has been able to dissent. As you know, with court judgments, sometimes there's a majority and sometimes there's a minority dissent, which might not carry the day, but it provides an alternative way of looking at things. And what Sikhakhane is saying in the speech is that we need to honor Madlanga because he's provided that space of dissent. And particularly, now I'm interpreting, but that's my license as someone giving a public opinion on the speech. I think in the New Dawn era, the space of dissent has become much, much smaller. A lot of powerful corporate interests, opinion makers, maybe even judges, because we all have political leanings, have been seduced by this idea that the New Dawn moment presented some kind of rupture, and that the safest way for South Africa to move forward would be to conform to that moment. But what and so the court, in some ways, which is one of our most noble institutions, has stood the test of time in democracy, and I think has been a great institution, a world-leading institution. But nonetheless, in this particular political moment, it hasn't been very prepared to hold political power to account in the way that it used to. For example, in the Zuma-Era, where the court did amazing work on the Nkandla judgment, etc. And so I think what Sikhakhane is calling on is a need for there to be more robust dissent in the court, which is allowed. It's not saying that the court must punish politicians for no reason, nor is it saying that the court should give politicians a free ride, but that there should be space for those debates, not only within the court, but within South African society. And with this Mkhwanazi Commission, which has disrupted a lot of the idea of the good ANC and the bad ANC, it's time for that dissent and that debate to really begin anew, in a way. But also, beyond just the political moment, it's about our conceptions of justice. It's about the Constitution itself, and us always being able to debate whether the Constitution is serving us or hindering us in a particular moment, and not just shutting down that debate, either by saying, well, the Constitution's all terrible and we should never look at it, or by saying, well, the Constitution is perfect and beloved and we should never change it either. But rather just taking a hard look at our society and basically just saying, where are we? And can we review our assumptions so that we do something different, rather than maybe importing some of the assumptions from the past into the present. So I think it's actually quite an important speech. But now we come to the commission part. And this is where Sikhakhane offers a hint about this commission, which I find very interesting and ties to Mkhwanazi and his allegations.
Well, I don't know about you and splendid solitude. You're standing right now at the feet of the beast into whose belly you're about to jump. But your qualities that we celebrate today will stand you great. Those qualities of humility, the ability to listen to others. Most of us like the fact that in this court, in you and others, we found people with our common epistemic backgrounds who could see when we were upset, who could sympathize with us, and we were not invisible to them. You loved the poor, you worked for them, because poverty is not the absence of resources and money, it's the absence of dignity, being invisible to those who dominate the discourse. Lastly, I want to say to you, Mkhulu, you may not be religious, but I know Ngumwesi. I want to close with a quote by Winfrey Phipps for you, which says this: "It is in the quiet crucible of your personal private sufferings that your noblest dreams are born, and God's greatest gifts are given in compensation for what you've been through." And with those words, I want to thank you, Nohatebe, and everyone, Nosisi, and everybody, because in you we saw a reimagined South African with an ability to unlearn wrong things that we were taught about each other. We want you to hambe kahle, and please fight the beast that in whose belly you are about to jump. Thank you.
So what I find interesting there is that Advocate Sikhakhane refers to the Mkhwanazi Commission, as I call it, which Justice Madlanga is about to lead, as a beast. And Justice Madlanga is in the belly of this beast. And he's basically saying he's seen the work that he's done and he's seen his independence of mind. And he's saying to his friend, and he's saying to this jurist who's about to wield a lot of power in a way that could fundamentally reshape the nation, don't be afraid, and please be brave enough to confront this beast. And so the speech then ties into the new moment that we're going into, this Mkhwanazi Commission, which could reveal all kinds of things about our country that may force us to rethink not just the current government or president or administration, but many of the assumptions that we've brought into this moment going forward. And Justice Madlanga, to be honest, I find him a fascinating figure right now because he's at the end of his judicial career. It's been a storied judicial career, to be sure. I was lucky enough to attend his farewell dinner recently and gain more insight into his life, but also the cases that he's written. But usually when you're at the end of a Concord judge career, you would think most of your public contributions have been made. But Madlanga is probably awaiting potentially his biggest public contribution yet, which is how he steers this commission to get to the bottom of these allegations about syndicates who could be running government, influencing maybe some in the judiciary, police, prosecuting authority, national executive. So I feel that in some ways Sikhakhane spoke for many people, and it's easy to be critical, of leaders and speeches and all of this and the bad things people have done. But sometimes we need to take a step back and say, hey, I appreciate this particular moment in our public life, because it in some ways speaks for the nation, which is saying, Justice Madlanga, we're tired of these commissions. Mkhwanazi has dropped bombshells and we need urgent answers. And now you are the person who is entrusted with this responsibility to help us find a way forward which doesn't end in the same disappointment which we have become used to. So, Justice Madlanga is about to enter the belly of the beast, and I thought Advocate Sikhakhane aptly paid tribute to him while showing the importance of the task he has on his shoulders going forward. Like, share, subscribe, keep it locked on SMWX. Make sure you reach out to us if you're interested in partnering with us as an advertiser. If you're watching on the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube rather, make sure we get to 300,000 subscribers. That's our next milestone. Help to share this video, boost it, like it, comment below, because that really helps it to reach more and more people. And make sure that you keep it locked on this podcast going forward. The Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh Experience, SMWX. And see you on the next one. What did you think of the speech? Let me know down below. Aye.